This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan.
Driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Well, hello there and welcome. I'm Jim Ervin, and this is Time Signatures. Season 5 is rolling on, and our guest today is touted as one of the leading voices of modern soul blues music. He has scored an impressive 10 BMA nominations throughout his career, recording with the Delmark and Severin Records labels. He has played in over 20 countries across the globe, performing in some of the biggest and most important international blues festivals out there. It's been said that his harmonica playing lends itself to some influence by Junior Wells and Junior Parker, but his voice takes inspiration from the likes of Otis Redding, Al Green, Teddy Pendergrass, and yep, I can absolutely hear some of those influences in his sound. He got his start after being recruited by Dave Spector to join his Chicago band in the 90s. From then, he quite literally took off, collaborating with some of the biggest names in the genre. Let's dig in and welcome our guest, Delmark recording artist, Tad Robinson. It's indeed a pleasure to have you on Time Signatures. How are you, sir?
Hey, Jim, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. How you doing?
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm glad to have you here, and we are absolutely having the time of our lives doing this program. But Tad, I want to dive right in because there's so much to talk about with you, including a new album, and we will talk about that in just a bit. But I want to start by asking you about your earliest memories of music.
Well, that would be as a kid in the streets of New York City, listening to AM radio on a transistor radio. People like Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, some of the British Invasion, Motown, Stax. There was so much great music on radio during those years and so many great voices. So those are the things that really reached me and stayed with me throughout my life, growing up on a diet of all that great R&B and soul and early rock.
Yeah, and I think we came up in one of the coolest times of the music world, didn't we?
Absolutely. We were very fortunate. I'm sure that a lot of people say that about the era that they grew up in, but I think we were lucky. Of course, when I was originally listening to a lot of music as a young person, it was a lot of the British Invasion that was reflecting what they had heard of American R&B and soul. So you had people like Eric Burdon and the Animals singing "We've Got to Get Out of This Place" and "It's My Life" and things like that, and John Lennon singing things like "Anna" that he got from Arthur Alexander records that were cut, in Muscle Shoals. So you had that interesting British influence. And then, a lot of us dug a little deeper and found out who were the ones that inspired them.
Right.
And that's how we discovered American blues and roots music.
I'll tell you what, man, that is such a fun trip down the rabbit hole. And I'm kind of a late comer to the blues. I've always kind of had an interest in the blues, but as I've gotten deeper in over the last 4 or 5 years, man, it's just like every time you take a little turn or a twist, you learn something new. And I absolutely love that. Now, how old were you when you first really got serious about playing music, and where did you start that journey?
Well, like I said, listening to all those early records, my brother had a record collection and he was older than me. And so he had all of everything from Hit the Road Jack, Ray Charles, to the Supremes, to Otis Redding, to the British Invasion, Beatles, the folk era, everybody from, Joan Baez, Dylan, Woody Guthrie. We had Pete Seeger records. So there was just a lot of inspiring music from a young age that I just became absorbed by. But I formed a band early on. I kind of heard those voices, people like Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, things that were on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And it dawned on me that that was just the way to approach melody and to approach singing songs and with different ornamentation. And that was the way I was raised as a singer, from listening to people like Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops, or, the Temptations, and people like that. So that was the education I was getting from just listening to my brother's record collection. So my earliest memories are of people like that those voices that, that really stood the test of time. Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, Curtis Mayfield. There was just so much on the radio then that you couldn't help be influenced by it and uplifted by it.
Tad, how old were you when that light came on and you realized that a business, being part of the music business was going to be in the cards for you, so to speak?
Well, I was just thinking the other day with the passing away of Brian Wilson, that I was 8 years old when I Get Around hit the airwaves. And so when I was listening to those doo-wop harmonies that he worked on in tunes like I Get Around, I was already something was getting in my ear that kind of led me to think that that was a life that I was going to join, because so from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I was already beginning to think of myself as a singer in some respects. And then, of course, by middle school or so, I got in my first rock bands and things like that.
Very cool. Now, as we shared in the introduction, you've had some incredible collaborations along the way with some of the biggest names in the blues. What are some of your most notable experiences that you've had along the way collaborating with some of these people?
Well, David Earl at Severin Records, I can start with him. David has been an amazing mentor and producer for me over the years. And he gave me a lot of opportunities. He brought Otis Clay in to sing background on my first record that I did at Severin, Did You Ever Wonder? He sang on 2 tracks, a tune by Kevin McHenry, great piano player Kevin McHenry, called Welcome Home. And he also sang background on an old R&B soul tune from 1971, Too Late to Turn Back Now, by the Cornelius Brothers and Sister Rose. We cut that, and Otis sang background with me. So in terms of collaborating with people, that was just a wonderful experience to work with Otis Clay on those tracks. And David Earl, the producer at Severin Records, owner of the label, president, he also brought in the Memphis Horns to play on my record, Back in Style. Nice. So they created the horn lines on that record. That was later. That was in 2015. Of course, when I first came to Chicago, I ended up working with a lot of the great players that were in Chicago during the 80s when I first arrived, because you had Steve Freund, Dave Spector, Larry Bell.
Wow.
You had the Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows. Their bass player, Bob Halledge, was with me for years. When I had the jam session that I hosted at Rose's Lounge back in the 80s in Chicago, everybody came through. Junior Wells came through, Melvin Taylor, Lavelle White, Huckleberry Hound. You had Dave Myers came through from the Aces, Little Walters, great sideman. So there were so many great musicians in Chicago when I arrived that you couldn't help but end up rubbing shoulders with a lot of the players that were there. In terms of collaborations and recording, I through the label work I've done, I got to work with a lot of great people that Delmark brought in for me to work with, and Severin. So yeah, it's been a real education to be able to work with some of these great players who've been so pivotal in the scene over the years. And I was just lucky to be kind of given those opportunities, to play with a lot of different cats over the years.
Yeah, right place, right time for sure.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
I'm assuming that you've shared the stage with some of these big names as well throughout the years.
Well,
Pick out, pick.
the funny thing is, yeah,
Go ahead.
as a singer, you get fewer opportunities to work with your heroes because,
Okay.
in other words, a lot of my friends who are sidemen, guitar players, piano players, drummers, bass players, they've worked with basically a who's who of singers because they're the ones that are called upon to back up
Okay.
singers. But me being like the guy I'm singing my book, So I have had a chance to work with people way back in the day. I was fortunate enough to blow hard behind Bo Diddley and
Nice.
Screaming Jay Hawkins and some some situations where my group was called upon to back up a headliner. But really those were rare times. Most of the situations I've had where I worked with some real legendary people, it was mostly doing recording work, not so much, on stage. As much as, like I say, my friends who were sidemen predominantly,
Sure.
who've worked with everybody.
Well, as I'm looking back or thinking back about, those early days when you were rubbing elbows with some of those big names, did you ever catch yourself kind of having a pinch me moment watching these guys perform when you were in the clubs with them?
Well, I have a pinch me moment every time the phone rings and there's a gig,
Okay.
because being in this business and being given the opportunity to travel the world singing my own tunes, I'm always amazed at the kindness of people I meet along the way, all the people who have helped me. Now I'm on the Delmark label. LBO Barilari and Julia Miller are the new owners of the label, and they're doing a beautiful job with keeping observing the traditional aspects of the label, but moving forward into the future. Yeah, I mean, the pinch me moments probably come from when we opened up for people like Muddy Waters back in the day, and we opened up for John Lee Hooker and a fresh, hot, fabulous Thunderbirds when they just started out with Kim and Jimmy Vaughn and Keith Ferguson, and opening up shows for them and getting a chance to play in front of them and talking to people like Kim and getting advice, things like that. Kim Wilson over the years. It's been eye opening, and it's always struck me that the cream of the crop guys are always the ones that have time for you and have a minute to hear you out and give you advice and help. When I first arrived in Chicago in the 1980s, people like Lonnie Brooks and Coco Taylor and Sun Seals, Fenton Robinson, Jimmy Johnson, all those folks were still very active and very accessible, Otis Rush, people like that. So it was always a real blessing to be able to hear them up close and personal, for sure.
Yes, sir. Well, Ted, you have been on the scene since 2004, according to what I was reading, making a name for yourself with a signature sound that is undeniably yours. How do you feel your sound has developed over the past 2 decades?
I think as you get older, you realize that you need to just be yourself in the music, and follow your own muse. I mean, you should listen to all that's going on around you, listen to what people are doing, but then as quickly as you hear it, forget it, because what people want to hear is your unique take on the music. Because that's one thing that blues gets criticized for. Some people who don't know think, oh, blues, to them it maybe sounds the same, or there's too much, of a certain timbre. But I think, and sometimes blues musicians have themselves to blame for that criticism if they don't create a new and put their own stamp on their music, So I think over the years I've just tried to keep developing my own perspective. I always keep recognition of whose music this is. I'm a journeyman doing a music that is an African American innovation and creation. I'm not a blues man. I'm a singer, and I happen to dabble in the world of blues and soul and R&B. But most of all, I just try to stay true to myself and listen to the greats. I'm influenced by people like O.V. Wright and James Carr and Solomon Burke, Dusty Springfield, Eric Burden, all those different people. But then you come out with your own thing.
Yes, sir. Now, I'm going to flip the page here for a second. The new album is entitled Soul in Blue, and I purchased a digital download in preparation for this chat, and I also believe in supporting the artist, so it was a pleasure to do that. All I can say is this is honestly some of the best soul blues I've heard in a long while.
Oh,
Talk
man,
about this project, would you please? You're welcome.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, and again, thanks for giving me the time to talk with you. Yeah, the new record came out of sessions over the last year and a half or so. All new. It's mostly original stuff. We did 2 covers. One is a Wilson Pickett cover, I'm Down to My Last Heartbreak, and the other one is Private Tonight by Arthur Adams, just a beautiful soul ballad. But yeah, the other tunes are all original tunes, and I recorded them mostly in Indianapolis with my band there, longtime band, Kevin Anker on keys and Dave Murray on bass, Paul Holman, great guitar player, on guitar, and Brian Yard on drums. So we did a lot of sessions with that unit. And then when I approached Delmark about putting it out, LBO Barilari, my co-producer, suggested I do some tracks with the Delmark All-Stars. So I got with the guys, kind of like the Delmark house band.
Yeah.
And we added Dave Spector on a track. And so it's kind of like two sections to the record. There's the Indianapolis tracks and there's the Chicago tracks.
That's kind of cool. Now, without a doubt, I caught some shades of Luther Vandross, a la Dance with My Father, in your cut, Somewhere There's a Train.
Oh, nice.
Such a rich, soulful tune, Tad.
Thank
Let me
you.
be clear, though, although I catch bits and pieces of Vandross in this song, you really tend to deliver in a way that makes this song 100% your own, like you were just referring to. And I don't want to insinuate for a moment that you're trying to knock off a particular artist's sound.
Sure.
Because that's not the case in this album, but you do, your voice kind of fluctuates between some of these big name singers, so to speak,
Well, as a singer, when you mention Luther Vandross, I mean, that's high praise. I mean, that was a voice, for the ages. So I mean, we're, all of us who are out here, we can't help but being, influenced by all the great pop music and everything that from the American songbook. I mean, there's so much more, to what goes into making a blues album than maybe people would think, because almost all the musicians I know that are out there, Sugar Ray Rayford and Daryl Newlish and D.K. Harrell, all these singers that I hear, they draw from all sorts of different wells. I mean, they're bringing in funk, they're bringing in soul, R&B. You have to listen to everything, But Somewhere There's a Train, that track I wrote in a van driving from, it was like a 12-hour drive somewhere in Europe.
Wow.
And I was feeling a little homesick. And I was sitting back there, and we'd been on the road for a few weeks, and had another week to do or something like that. And I was thinking, well, somewhere there's a train that's going home, you know, and it's just a passing thought that came into my mind. And then I just pulled out my phone and started using my notes app and just started writing all the lyrics. And that came together in just
Wow.
it was a really good use of van time because about 45 minutes later, I had the whole song done. And
That's crazy.
And then I was with a great Hammond player over there, Alberto Marsico, great Italian Hammond organ player. And we stopped at my road manager's house in Münster, Germany, and he had an organ. He had an organ in his living room. And so Alberto sat down at the organ and he said, sing me what you have from this song. And I already had the melody and I had the lyrics. And he just sat and harmonized it. So I gave him a co-write on the song, and he plays beautiful on it. But to me, that's kind of a gospel, gospel, blues, R&B tune.
Yeah, I would agree.
It got a lot of different influences, but it was one that I was really, really happy with. And I ended up having my old buddy, Alex Schultz, the great blues guitar player who, some of your viewers might know from his time. He was the music director with Hank Ballard. He was the guitar player with Rod Piazza and the Mighty Flyers. And he was the guitar player with the great harmonica player, William Clark.
Wow.
And so Alex he's played on all my records for the last 20 years. But he played guitar on that particular track.
Okay. And I don't know what made me pick that track, but I'll tell you, as I was listening to the album, it was one of those tracks that, and I'm one of these people that likes to have music that makes me feel.
Sure.
And
sure.
that track 100% caught me and made me feel, and it just resonated with me. So I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate that, Jim. That's all we're trying to do out here, just reach out. Yeah.
So with this new album out there, are you keeping busy these days touring and promoting?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. I mean, I just came off of some European touring a month ago or so, and now we're doing, our typical summertime street festivals and some blues festivals and some up and coming things that are happening and, scheduling out the year and staying busy behind the recording and, bit by bit getting, reviews in that have been real kind.
Very cool. Now, Ted, here's the most important part of this discussion. Where can people go to learn more about you, buy some copies of this incredible album and some merch, and maybe book you for a gig?
We'd love to hear from any and all of the above that you mentioned.
Okay.
So the best place, you can reach me on social media on Facebook, Tad Robinson Official page, and you can reach out to me on tadrobinson.com, which is my website. If you want to buy the record and any of my others, they're all available at, generally wherever you buy your music, but you could go by Delmark Records website and pick up the new one. We'd appreciate bringing traffic to the website. And of course, coming out to any gigs, you can see where I'm at by visiting my web, tadrobinson.com, and come out to a gig. And we'd love to send anybody home with the new CD and some of the older ones as well.
There you go. Well, Tad Robinson, I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm certainly looking forward to catching one of your shows in or close to Michigan. So please keep me in the loop. Much continued success, and look forward to seeing you out there.
Jim, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure talking with you, and good luck. And yeah, I hope to see you in Michigan sometime soon.
That would be fun. Well, before we wrap up here, I want to remind you that it takes an estimated 5,000 music streams to raise the equivalent of just a $20 CD. I couldn't believe that either when I heard about it. So I've made it my policy personally to buy music from the artists first, and then and only then will I stream from the various platforms. I mean, if we want to have music live out there on the road, We owe it to ourselves and these musicians to spend some of our hard-earned money supporting their music and merch. And trust me, they will thank you every single time. Thank you for your consideration, as always. And that wraps up this edition of Time Signatures. Once again, my thanks to our guest, Tad Robinson, but also to you.
Jim.
Without you, none of this would be possible. Jim Ervin reminding you, keeping the blues alive is everyone's responsibility, but preserving the history of the blues, one story at a time, that's my mission. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
You know I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.